give us just kind of the timeline here.
So the timeline starts around draft time. The Cowboys got a call from Pittsburgh asking about, hey, we got this guy named George Pickens. He's fun. Come get him. And the Cowboys were one of only just a couple of teams that really bit because Pittsburgh was shopping him around throughout draft weekend. And the Cowboys were one of just a couple of teams that kind of bit on having a negotiation there. The price that Pittsburgh was asking around that time wasn't what the Cowboys were, at that time willing to bargain with. So they were like, we're good. Talk stalled. And Cowboys kind of went in some other directions. After the draft, obviously, they didn't draft a receiver. They start looking at free agent options. Amari Cooper starts to build some interest around the team. I reported on that. There was a couple of other trade scenarios that they kind of worked through. Another one in the same division as Pickens that they were able to, kind of feel out and see what the possibilities were there. But fast forward to what is today? Today's Friday. This went down on Wednesday. So fast forward to Monday, and talks start to heat up again between the Steelers and Cowboys. Now, granted, when all this stuff started coming down on Tuesday night, I had been in my ear, I had been told around draft times, like, yeah, we looked into Pickens, we're not going there. And so whenever all this stuff started to build on Tuesday night, I'm trying to watch the damn Warriors game. Jimmy Butler's in game 1 of the damn playoffs. Steph Curry just got hurt. I am stressing. Everyone's tagging me saying, Pickens. I'm like, y'all shut up. No, Pickens isn't happening. And because I had already been told, I was like, I already know because I've already asked about it. And then I get a call, literally playing Fortnite at like 11:30 at night on Tuesday. And I get a call saying, hey, Pickens for a 3rd and a 6th, which it ended up being a 3rd and a 5th. And I was like, you got to be shitting me. And my guy was like, yeah. And I was like, okay. So ended up staying up all night getting content ready. And it went down at about 6:15 the next morning. Yeah, it's a fascinating one.
Yeah. What did you think of his press conference? Gave a similar response for a lot of questions that were asked of him, kind of about, I don't know, the rocky kind of off the field path he's had. I mean, even going back to Georgia, less off field, I should say, more just like the way he kind of handles himself day to day. Because I can't think of like, any domestic violence or off the field stuff, that really came up. Just that he's clearly a knucklehead, right? What do you think kind of that mindset he's showing up to Dallas with? And do you think he's just gonna same guy or potentially a new look George Pickens? I don't know.
Hey man, I'll give it to I'll give it to the Cowboys or his agent or whoever. Somebody coached him up real nice before that conference call yesterday, and he didn't say one thing, or he didn't even get close to tripping into saying anything that would be shitting on the Steelers from his time in Pittsburgh. Anytime he was asked about his past, he's like, yeah, I'm just where my feet are, looking forward to the future and building a winning culture with the Dallas Cowboys. It was a 12-minute availability. He said the phrase winning culture 6 times. So that was definitely one of the coaching points. Had to be.
Oh yeah.
It was. He sounded like a scholar. I mean, he didn't say one thing that could be interpreted in a negative light. So, I think once we get Pickens in person for the first time, and he's, I guess it allows for a little bit more of a human interaction, then maybe he might be a little bit more willing to open up about his past in Pittsburgh and what happened there. But also I could see it to where like he doesn't care anymore. Like and he just wants to move past Pittsburgh, and now he's in Dallas, and we'll see how that goes. But I talked to a couple of people in Pittsburgh over the course of this last 72 hours. And one of them was part of the team for Pittsburgh last year, and he understood what goes on in that locker room, what kind of person Pickens is. And he made a really good analogy. He said George Pickens is one of those kids in class that all the teachers hate, but all the students love. And it's like he's a knucklehead for sure. He shows up late to meetings. He's habitually late to meetings to a point to where towards the end of Pittsburgh, they had somebody hired just to make sure that George Pickens showed up to meetings on time, and was late for a couple of flights last year to games. I mean, it got to a point to where Pittsburgh just grew really frustrated about his tardiness at the very basis of it. And then it didn't help that, he would be challenging throughout the week as far as offensive game plan and stuff like that. However, I think there's a narrative out there that, this guy is kind of a diva prima donna. I don't get that sense. I don't get that. He loves football. Dude loves football. And that's been communicated to me multiple times over the last 72 hours. I wouldn't call him a diva. I think what JW Crunch said is perfect. He's just a knucklehead. And, we'll see how that pans out here. It could be great. And, things work out and he becomes a legitimate, number 2 or 1A, 1B type situation with CeeDee Lamb. And, hey, man, they're able to maximize Dak Prescott's final years in Dallas. Or, worst case scenario, it's an absolute shit show and he moves on in free agency next season and they end up getting a 3rd or a 4th round pick back as a compensatory. So in reality, yes, it's a risk because you're kind of risking what this first season in 2025 looks like under Brian Schottenheimer. But I think the Cowboys see some recuperation on the backside of
that. Do they know what number he's going to wear in Dallas?
No. And this was kind of funny because I asked him that on the conference call. And I have a feeling somebody was like waving to him in the background while I asked this question. Yeah, because he was like, I don't know, man, but I'm thinking I guess I'll know when y'all know. That's how it went down. And I just know there was somebody in the background like but I don't know. We don't know. The 14th has already been taken by Marquise Bell. So I don't know if that's a possibility. Number 1 is taken as well by Jalen Tolbert. But I mean, it's George Pickens we're talking about. I think he could walk in and, pretty much get what I want him to wear 81. I think that'd be badass. Get him to wear Terrell Owens' old number. Put 81 next to 88. I think that would be a lot of fun.
Yeah. Are there any single-digit numbers available?
3 might be.
Yeah.
3 was worn by Brandon Cooks. Yeah, 3 was worn by Brandon Cooks. I'm not sure if it got snatched up. I think it did, but if it did, then it's not to anybody who could probably withstand Pickens coming through and taking it. I don't know. There's some options.
So with the person in the background that you assume was doing this to the number, do you think they just had like a whiteboard with winning culture and they just kept like underlining it or like?
Yeah, right. That's how it felt. It felt very rehearsed. I'll say that. And you got to give credit to the Cowboys. I mean, that's their job is when he comes in and make sure he says the right thing so that they're not off on the wrong foot. Especially given how his time in Pittsburgh went, that's their job. But it was very clear that it was pretty rehearsed. I can't lie. But
y'all need to go dig up his Pittsburgh Steelers like intro press conference and see the difference in what he says versus the Cowboys one. Because I feel like, man, I mean, this, like in recruiting, you'll meet a kid as a freshman or sophomore, and then you won't see him for some time, and you interview him like a year later, and it's like a completely different kid, and he's media trained, and it's like, whoa, where did you go?
I think the biggest example of that was probably that I've dealt with was probably Milroe. When I first met Milroe, it wasn't like he was like a loose cannon. It wasn't like that. He was just like a lot more like personable, I guess. And Milroe's a really good dude. I'm not trying to take away from that. But like later in his high school career, it became a lot more rehearsed and like robotic. I'm like, dog, like we're boys. Like it's okay. Like chill out. Milroe's a good example of that. But yeah, you're right. There's a lot of recruits that, they catch some media training and they go to work.